You're listening to Workplace Weekly, covering workplaces and labor activism and trying to have a remotely decent time doing it. Call us Craig David cause we are born to do it. Let's do this thing.
I like it. I'm Fanny Wandel.
And I'm Kate Bailey.
And you're listening to Workplace Weekly,
a podcast analysing workplaces, work culture, and labour activism through topical stories and interviews.
Kate, this is a new podcast for us. Do you want to tell us why we wanted to do this?
Yes, I do actually. And it's been a desperately long 2 years because it's always been in the hand and heart mission to create media about workplaces. Problematically for us, we got a little mixed up in a little industry business with the craft beer thing, as we all know. And that really kind of derailed the overall mission that we had with producing podcasts about workplaces, which is to produce stuff that won't get us sued, which is educational, helpful for people. And now that we've sort of cut our teeth as well, I guess, a little bit in the craft beer industry, coming out the other side of that, I'm just realizing everything we experienced and learned and created media about in the last 2 years naturally lends itself to the broader workplace dialogue. So Workplace Weekly is the place where we can get all of these stories together, bring a new, fresh voice to the workplace beat, because I think the media is often under-resourced, but also they're not workplace experts. And on the other side, we've also got workplace experts who speak a different language to media people who are, we're in our own vocational world.
Mm-hmm.
So creating this space is about bringing those two worlds together with a unique voice, hopefully finding stories which are compelling and entertaining for people. It shouldn't be dry.
Yeah.
But also trying to have that educational element where we can sort of help people to understand what's going on in workplaces, because no one's happy. Everyone's feeling some sense of crisis. And hopefully from that, there's some understanding to push the conversation forward. I guess, what are your thoughts, as I say all of that, about the workplace beat and the need for a workplace beat, Fanny?
I mean, absolutely. I agree with every single point you brought up. I think it was really important to cast a wider net. We had such a niche focus on craft beer. And what we saw throughout all of that was the problem was the same no matter what industry we were talking about. And then, as you say, there was a serious lack of space for people to inform themselves and maybe practice a bit of critical thinking. Yeah, I would say so.
What do you like when you say critical thinking? What do you think? People, how can people approach this subject matter differently when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think it's thinking about it for myself, my own reasons for participating in this. I think it's removing mine and your role of kind of holding people's hands throughout an issue that they have within the workplace, and this is more about providing nuance and finding all relevant stories and things within pop culture that we could maybe relate to, and really providing a tool where people can further their own education and maybe have a bit of introspection.
Yes. And I think that that's important because a lot of people that we've dealt with who have come to us with cases, and there's been hundreds, a huge part of their healing has been understanding what was happening to them and around them at the time that they were experiencing these things in the workplace.
Yes.
So maybe we can do a little bit of preemptive mitigation work in that regard in trying to sort of break all of this down. And the good news is because, this is a fresh podcast and we're going to be able to actually do fun stuff on this podcast because, knock on wood, we are not going to get sued for anything we do or say on this. Absolutely. When I saw that March 8 was a potential to launch this show, I was like, we need to do that because we have International Women's Day is one of these topics where it's like, as a woman, as I grew up with this day, I was like, yes, I'm showing up for it because, what do we got? But as corporate companies have realized the power of like performative support and social media and like what that little cocktail can do for their brand,
Yeah.
we've definitely seen International Women's Day sort of take on a different meaning in the society that we inhabit today. So we are definitely going to get into rating the biggest corporate International Women's Day fuck ups that we've seen in some recent years. And later on in this episode, we're also going to give you a history lesson on how International Women's Day is completely connected to the workplace movement and women. And we're also going to be tackling our first workplace conundrum in Workplace Savage.
Let's get into it. Right. KB, it's International Women's Day. It's a day where I really want to feel good, but most of the time I also feel pretty shitty. Yeah. And to represent that feeling, I want to kick us off with our little baby treat for everyone. And here come some examples for International Women's Day fails from companies. KB, kick us off.
With pleasure. So we're going all the way back to 2022.
Oh my God.
New Zealand Rugby has apologized for its handling of a Twitter post that was intended to celebrate International Women's Day, but instead drew major backlash. Major backlash. The All Blacks were criticized for the tribute, which said the team would be forever grateful to all the women in our lives that allow us to play the game we love. However, the post contained no mention of the New Zealand women's rugby team, who are World Cup title holders and have won 5 of the past 6 tournaments. Many were quick to point out the error in judgment, including Sevu Reece and Aaron Smith among those pictured in the tweet, given that both the players have controversial pasts involving women. Now, we're going to stay in 2022. This one comes from The Guardian, and it says here in the headline, women are, quote, thriving in the Met if you ignore all the misogyny. So in The Guardian, in an interview to mark International Women's Day, the National Police Chiefs Council National Lead for Violence Against Women and Girls, Maggie Blythe, also highlighted the murder of Sarah Everard by a serving officer as a watershed moment and criticized the dismissal of violent officers as a few bad apples. Now, just some quick context here for those who aren't aware. Earlier this year, 2023, the Met had to issue a series of apologies and a series of communication, essentially apologizing for the fact that one of the now most prolific serial rapists in the UK was actually one of their serving police officers. And that the protocols to actually bring this officer to some form of accountability had been failing for many years. So it does make that tweet particularly poignant. And if they got backlash then, you can't imagine what they get if they try it this much. 8, but let's keep an eye on their Twitter feed because the Met are just known for supporting women. No problems there. Now we're going back into time.
Further back.
All the way back. And you're going to think it's the 1800s, but it's not. It's 2021.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. So in 2021, Burger King UK came under fire for tweeting, "Women belong in the kitchen" on International Women's Day. So basically, this is what they tweet. There's no other context. But then eventually there are some threaded tweets where the fast food giant pointed out the lack of female chefs in the restaurant business. So they follow on from "women belong in the kitchen" to "if they want to, of course." Yet only 20% of chefs are women. We're on a mission to change the gender ratio in the restaurant industry by empowering female employees with the opportunity to pursue a culinary career. It doesn't get any richer than that. It doesn't get any tone deaf than that. I cannot comprehend that a group of people sat around a literal workspace and said, "This is it. This is how we're going to support women this year. Let's do it." Hey. All right, Fanny, what do you got for us?
We're going to stay within the fast food space, apparently, but we're going to go further back, and now we are in 2018. This is where Reba McEntire was featured in a KFC commercial, and she was the very first female Colonel Sanders for KFC.
Like famous country singers, The singer and actress is the first ever female to...
So, I don't know about you, KB, but the messaging in this, or the purpose of all of this, is kind of lost on me. Can you fill in any gaps for me at all?
There is not one gap that I can fill in here, Fanny, because I don't really understand what is empowering about having a woman dress up as a man, in particular this man, as the center point of the campaign or as a way to raise awareness. I think this is the kind of campaign that probably could have worked in any other context, but it's that same critical error of trying to make it perform for the audience of women's empowerment that makes it fall completely flat.
Yeah.
And Reba, like, what are you doing, Reba?
Honestly, paycheck could not have been that good.
Oh, Reebs. Oh.
We're going to move on to McDonald's. And McDonald's, in the very same year, 2018, they wanted to celebrate International Women's Day in one location for that one day by inverting their famous golden M into a golden W. It didn't go over well. It's hard to imagine why, especially when MTV did it the year before. And they could have maybe take a little hint from that. But all in all, what can we say other than these are some pretty lackluster attempts at making me feel included?
I think you're 100% correct there. And I think that there's a reason why it does sort of, people say, oh, they're hysterical, that nothing will make them happy. We're just trying to do a nice thing. And it's like, McDonald's, or whatever you're fucking called now, like, you saw in 2017, like, someone had to see that this inversion of the letter was, like, going to be the thing that, like, was the supportive thing, and then it just falls flat on its face.
Yeah.
You saw it, it's like, presumably, and if you didn't see it, what's wrong with you? Like, is that a part of the problem? And it just goes to show as well with all of these companies that it's never just International Women's Day. They can do the song and dance, but, like, how about every other day, including International Women's Day?
Yeah.
Our rights and our needs are not being met in the workplace. So I think another great example, and this also just helps prove that, Elon Musk is not the only person ruining space for women. Obviously, NASA were well ahead of the curve there. Can you tell us a little bit about Sally Ride?
Absolutely. I had a lot of fun Googling Sally the other day. And refreshing my memory a little bit. So Sally Ride went to Stanford and was obviously an astronaut for NASA. She is the third woman who has ever been in space and the first American woman. And I believe her flight was in 1983. And leading up to that flight, she obviously had to sit down and do some interviews and news conferences. And the questions that she was faced with they weren't very similar to her male counterparts. So she got asked questions like, how is this flight going to affect her reproductive organs? And next you had people asking her if when things went wrong at work, did she weep? Finally, you had sponsors wanting to provide Sally with very feminine specific kits and products. One of these was a makeup kit, because obviously that's probably on top of her list of priorities when she's out on a space mission.
Dude, I mean, if you're on that space station, you ain't doing an astro walk without a full face of makeup.
Right? Basically.
What if you get abducted and you look like shit?
Yeah, no. And get this, because they weren't, they were really, really trying to make sure that she was comfortable up there. So they also wanted to provide her with tampons for her 6-day flight. 100 tampons is what they thought Sally needed for 6 days.
I mean, what's going on?
Scientists.
Do you think when they suggested the 100 tampons, do you think they were like 100 supers or like 100 lights? Like, do you think that they were even in that realm of being able to comprehend, this exchange that they were having?
I really don't think so. But for any future reference, mixed sizes, like, honestly, gotta be accommodating.
I know. Let's do this. And, like, can I just say, there is a great part of internet history around the 100 tampons that we're going to share right here.
Remember when NASA sent a woman to space for only 6 days, and they gave her 100 tampons. 100 tampons. And asked, will that be enough? 'Cause they didn't know if that was enough. These are our nation's greatest minds. They are literally rocket scientists. 100
you have it. 100 tampons, 6 days. Greatest minds. Wild. So now that we're sort of like stepping out and thinking about other abstract workplaces, I guess you could say, I always think about the workplace that is in front of us, but we never call it a workplace. And that is the workplaces of women who are in the public eye, celebrities, essentially. So, anyone that's in that space. The workplaces are in front of us. Every time we talk about a woman, we're essentially in the public eye, we're essentially talking about her in her workplace, right?
Always.
So I was particularly fascinated by the Pamela Anderson documentary that recently came on Netflix, and I thought it was an incredibly poignant and insightful look at the workplace that a woman like Pamela Anderson is dealing with.
Yeah.
What does she show up to work and deal with every single day? And she was doing it in a very retrospective way, and I think she managed to capture the essence of that particular time period for women celebrities especially really well. Have you had a chance to watch it, Fanny?
I have. I unfortunately also saw the Pam and Tommy series that came out last year that basically re-exploited her, re-traumatized her. So to watch that, her documentary, was refreshing. It was so nice to see someone take control of their own narrative. And I guess with everything that we've done, it always is, I feel a little bit content when I finish something like that. Like I just leave with a good for you sort of feeling. But of course, I'm always in the comment section. It's horrible there. It's terrible.
You're sucking
the
the punishment.
beating that she has taken in the public sphere for reclaiming the narrative about her life, her decision-making
Her
process.
life.
Yeah. It's mind-blowing because for the last 30 years we've been exploiting her sexuality and she's made nothing off of it.
That's so true. And I think this is where you can really clearly see an example of how men and women are treated completely differently with the same subject matter, right? So
Yeah.
you've got Tommy. Oh, wait, Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
He's loving this series. He thinks it's cool.
He's the big dick legend that got to hook up with Pamela Anderson. That's
He-
all he gets to
yeah.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, he loves it. And he's posting his like junk on Instagram again. Like they went through the same thing. They made decisions together, but they are perceived completely differently by the society we literally walk around in now. It's bizarre to see that. And I've never seen a man like Tommy Lee have to step out and reclaim their image. You know what men do? Rehabilitate their image. That's their workplace in the public eye. They're like, I'm going to rehabilitate it, man. Like, let's call Stephen Bartlett. Let's get on one of these like hotshot shows. Like,
Yeah, got to.
They love it. And yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to me.
Absolutely. No, and the stuff going on with Pamela right now, it's also ties in with another current pop culture issue that we're facing and that we saw on the internet just a few weeks ago. And that was where a very prominent gamer, was live streaming his screen. And some of the people watching his stream were able to see that he had a tab open on a website that had deepfake porn. And if you don't know what deepfake is, it is where you use images of other people and you use AI to create augmented fake porn, basically. It's awful, and a lot of women, once this was discovered, found themselves on this website and now have to pay a fortune in legal fees and have to go through the exhausting process of trying to get these things removed. It's probably going to take some of them years. You can't repair the damage that's already been done to them, and how violated they must feel. And again, much like with Pamela, you had people out there being completely apathetic to it, laughing at their pain, and basically saying, it is what it is, and just let go of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that completely denies the person who's been violated their reality. They made a choice, right? And that's what everyone comes back at them with, is like, oh, well, you chose to be in the public eye. Like, you kind of like, you asked for it. Like, where does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
When we're talking about consent.
Not totally sure anyone chose to be a part of fake augmented reality porn.
Yeah, but for these people that are willing to say things like that, they're just coming from the perspective of like, well, this is like a part of what you signed up for. Like this is like, if you're a pretty woman and you're a gamer and you're a live streamer, well, what did you expect?
Yeah, take it.
It's good publicity. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
man up. Whole thing. Happy International Women's Day. Man up. Like,
and the thing is that it is a violation. And if you don't have the resources or the know-how, what are you going to do? But I can guarantee you, if, you know, King Charles had a deepfake porn about him, right? How quickly that shit would be taken down and removed, because it's always about power, access, and resources to be able to deal with these things.
Yeah.
And we're creating an environment where we still live within a hypersexualized culture, and this is just going to reinforce the values of the quote real society, like the real life society, with the digital society, which is to say, well, women don't have any agency over how their image is used, and so be it. My warning sign for that is, though, like, I have a picture on LinkedIn, okay? And I'm not saying people want to make deepfakes about me, but I want to point out the vulnerability of anyone with a photo anywhere on the goddamn internet. If you're a celebrity and this is a high-profile case with media sniffing around and you can't get shit to happen, just plain Jane Doe, just to use a term like that, has no hope.
None.
And if your employers are, you know, Googling you, it could be that that's what comes off.
Yeah.
And if the deepfake's good enough, there's no justification.
Yeah. It's also, who's making money off of those deepfakes? That's also the thing. I mean...
Well, we know it's men.
Yeah.
It's always men. And that's the thing. People are making money off women's bodies when women say, hey, actually, you know what? I'd like to make the money off my body.
Yeah.
You're a slut.
Yeah.
And you also should not complain when other people make money off your body, a la Pamela Anderson.
Yeah. Anyone on OnlyFans getting shit every day.
Yeah. And this just brings it full circle, which is companies can perform whatever the fuck they want to perform with this Women's Day stuff. They can create these PR disasters, and worse is when they create a PR disaster knowing that it's going to be, because they're like, oh, this is even better. Do it, because every other day of the year, we're getting the same amount of shitty rights that you've left us with from day dot.
Yeah.
So, fuck off.
Please.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Listen up. Workplace Weekly is an entirely independent production, funded by the commercial activities of Hand and Heart. We do not run any membership or subscriber options, but we ask you that if you'd like to support our work, please share our work on socials. Tell your friends to listen to an episode and send them a link. And rate, review, and subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple. Maybe both. One post or one share or one review can make a huge difference. And if you would like to support us and appreciate the work we do, this is what we recommend you do to support us. Thank you so much for listening.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow.
Welcome to the corner of Workplace Weekly we like to call The More You Know. I'm speaking to my meme queens out there, because that is a great meme, but it is true. The more you know. This segment is about telling you things that you might not know. Let's get into it. Now, we had planned a wholesome little history segment, and we were also going to record this segment together today, that being Fanny and myself. However, due to some bad weather and the trains shutting down, that is not possible today. That said, I wanted to jump on here, little miffed, little ticked off, if you will. I read a headline last night that basically shocked me. And it might shock you too. And the headline reads, "Gender equality will take 300 years to achieve. UN chief warns." 300 years? 300 years? And they wonder why we're a little cross, little ticked off. They wonder why we get a little, uptight when they spend all of International Women's Day asking when International Men's Day is. Anyway, this article reads a little like this. It continues with an optimistic theme. Quote, "Progress towards gender equality is vanishing before our eyes," Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the Commission of the Status of Women on Monday. Speaking to the key UN women's rights groups ahead of International Women's Day on March 8, the director said that gender equality is 300 years away, according to the latest estimates from UN Women, the organization dedicated to gender equality and the empowerment of women. Now, one of the other quotes from this director, which I think is really poignant, centuries of patriarchy, discrimination, and harmful stereotypes have created a huge gender gap in science and technology. Let's be clear, global frameworks are not working for the world's women and girls. They need to change. I agree with this man. 300 years? 300 years and I don't have equality? A very privileged white woman? Excuse me, lower my taxes. I'm not getting an equal access to life. This is a scam. Lower all of our taxes. And the thing that frustrates me quite a lot, and we posted a meme about this for International Women's Day last year, is that this could change tomorrow. Those 300 years could become literally 7 days if the whole world took all of these things seriously and said we're just not going to allow this sort of subjugation to happen. It is so frustrating. We have the resources, we have the expertise, and we have plans. What we don't have is go-ahead from power holders and stakeholders who all of these changes would be consequential and inconvenient for them. Anyway, let's return to our scheduled programming, which is a little bit of history about International Women's Day, and I'm going to throw it to our beloved Fanny Wandel to kick this history lesson off.
The history of International Women's Day is necessarily political, as it emerged from international socialist and Marxist activism in the early 20th century. International Women's Day from the beginning was about economic equality of women, bettering working conditions for women, and suffrage. It was about rights and equal treatment of women in the workplace. Born from a pledge at the International Socialist Women's Conference in 1907 to fight for equality in every aspect of life, in 1909, American socialists declared the last Sunday in February as National Women's Day, the first International Women's Day held on March 18, 1911, in Europe. The most dramatic celebration of International Women's Day was in 1907, where women led demonstrations from the factories and breadlines, igniting the Russian Revolution. The women's insurrection culminated in the Tsar's abdication within a matter of days, and suffrage not long thereafter. A Hallmark card or a cupcake doesn't quite have the same gravitas. The events in Russia set the date for the celebration of International Women's Day, March 8th, in Europe, and in 1922, International Women's Day was established as a communist holiday and remained so until the mid-1960s. Sometime between 1922 and 1967, International Women's Day became plural. In the 1970s, feminists infused International Women's Day with new meaning as women's groups were joined by leftists and labor organizations calling for equal pay, equal economic opportunity, equal legal rights, reproductive rights, subsidized childcare, and the prevention of violence against women. The UN formally embraced International Women's Day in 1975, and in 1977 invited member states to declare March 8th as an official UN holiday for women's rights and world peace.
The UN's global theme for International Women's Day 2023 is Digit All, Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality, exploring the impact of the digital gender gap on widening socio-economic inequalities, protecting women's rights in digital spaces. A competing theme for International Women's Day 2023 exists, and that is #EmbraceEquity, which aims to get the world talking about why equal opportunities aren't enough. This competing theme is presented by internationalwomensday.com, which ranks as #1 on Google for, quote, International Women's Day. The site is a marketing campaign which is privately owned by a management consultancy and funded by large corporations. Every year they launch a competing theme. Throughout the 21st century, International Women's Day has seen a dilution and commercialization in the West. This is a great example. We frequently see Women's Day cards, flowers, and gifts among adornments used as means of, quote, celebrating women, or vague performative marketing from corporations promoting general and vague notions of equity from those who still haven't had equal representation on their boards and who engage in exploitative practices. International Women's Day has always been about economic rights, egalitarianism, and radical social reform. It is necessarily political. International Women's Day is a day which marks the truly revolutionary achievements of many women in the name of social justice and equity. It is a day where we should collectively be compelled to recognize that every other day of the year, a quote, strong woman is rather viewed as feisty, difficult, emotional, hysterical. I don't know, just think about what you've been called in the last 24 hours. International Women's Day should serve as an inspiration for revolution, ultimately, a call to action, acknowledging the monumental progress made to date and achieved for modern society in our workplaces, while recognizing that every day our rights remain under threat and equity has not been achieved. That means that there are still revolutions to be had. We are yet to see a century of female suffrage in many countries. Women are being killed for asserting their rights. The gender gap is widening, and women's rights are being eroded globally. Institutional misogyny exists, and we are fighting for equity in our workplaces, today and every day. Cupcakes are nice, but they cannot and should not, and bloody damn well will not, distract us from our rights.
Okay, so one of the thrilling things about having a new podcast format to work with is that we can have lots of unique and exciting segments. This next one is called Workplace Savage. I have been listening to Dan Savage for most of my adult life, I think. I love the guy, and I love his podcast format where he'll take a question and provide his expertise and experience. And I've been working in workplaces for a decade, you know, in this capacity that I'm in now. I'm an investigator, and I think I can help people with their little workplace problems or their big workplace problems. So we're going to trial this format of Workplace Savage, where anyone can send in any type of workplace question you may have. It can also be legal stuff or whatever, and we'll do our best to give a thoughtful answer. And hopefully it allows people to talk about things that maybe they don't even know it's a problem, but it makes them feel weird.
Yeah.
And then I can be like, yo, that's a problem.
Such a problem.
Such a problem. All right, so Workplace Savage.
Yeah, we've got our first one already. It starts off, hi, I love my colleagues and my job, but I dislike my employer as an organization, largely due to its senior management. What to do?
What to do, indeed. So I think this is a pretty common problem for people in the workplace these days. So, you know, if you work for Tesla, that could be problematic for you given how things have gone for the company, the litigation that's against them, and Elon Musk's behavior. If you work for Burger King and they put out a tweet like the international, you know, it creates these immediate feelings of disconnection from the type of person and professional that you want to be and who's paying you to be that.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately I can definitely see that this is something a lot of people would struggle with, and I do see and hear it a lot. And people want to have pride in where they work. Their priorities are changing, and I guess now we can get to the crux of the problem, which is, will senior management listen? So the first thing is, if they're not aware, that's the first part. Why? Is it because for this person, you know, is it because your colleagues do not raise these issues to senior management? Is there a disconnection where the senior management think everything's fine and dandy and they're not aware of the discontent?
Mm-hmm.
And the second question would be, so let's say that they're not aware. How do you make them aware? This is where it can get really challenging, because to go forward on your own and say, I take issue with X, Y, and Z, and as your employee, I would prefer we, you know, take a different approach to these things, it's probably not going to go well.
No.
Just
straight off the bat, probably not.
Probably not. Even the best employees in the world would sort of see that as being like, okay. Also, the level of like disgruntled that people ascribe to that is like, oh, you're just like complaining about this tiny issue. So my first piece of advice would be to understand where your position and how you're feeling fits into the context of how your colleagues are feeling. So are your colleagues feeling the same way? Do you talk openly about that? What's happening? Because that's the opportunity to organize, right?
Yeah.
So if it's coming down to core issues of principle and like the way the senior management are doing things, you need to be very careful in your approach, and it needs to be presented as an opportunity. Collectively working with colleagues to put something together unifies immediately the goal of going to senior management. And in that unity, the senior management should, probably won't, take a little more time to assess what's being brought to them.
Yeah.
It allows you to vibe check the way things are written. It allows everyone to like kind of condense the overall issues into things that are more of an opportunity for change. Now, let's say everything's going okay and you've had this conversation with colleagues, you have the capacity to write something like this, or you've decided you're going to go to the management. You should not only highlight the things that you take issue with, but present ideas that the workforce would be happy to assist implementing to bring a solution to the problem. So not knowing what this person is specifically talking about, you would say, we disagree with the approach we have to International Women's Day.
Yeah.
That tweet was disappointing, and we need to have better protocols in place to make sure that those things don't happen. We need to hire a diversity manager or like whatever. One of the big challenges with senior management is going in, telling them what the problems are, and them telling you what the solution is. So however you present the problems, you need to present also the solution that you're happy with. A lot of people would say this is a list of demands. It is.
Yeah.
But if you say it as suggestions and things that the workforce are happy to implement, it kind of sets the tone for the conversation in a different way.
Yeah.
So we've kind of moved through all of the parts of like, are they aware? No. What do we do? Then the second thing is, are they aware? Yes. The next question should be, why haven't they done anything about it?
Yeah.
Because that's going to, and this question and all of this leads you down to one clear point. So we could talk through all the variables, and I won't. I'm going to really get into this like final question, which is, if you go through all of this and this company indicates to you that they're not willing to evolve, they're not willing to change, you can feel discontentment in yourself, but also in your colleagues, and the work environment sours, it's not for you.
Yeah.
There's probably not a lot of companies for a lot of people. We all have to make sacrifices and compromises. And if you go out on your own, like hand in heart and me in this business, there are other challenges that come with it. But ultimately, if you love your job and you love your colleagues, but the people that you are directly engaged in the transaction with regarding your employment are not going to do anything to change that transaction to a favorable one for you, you need to look elsewhere. Bottom line, which is the sad reality. And there are ways that you can implement questions into the recruiting process for yourself that may give you a little bit of a better way to predict these red flags, things around culture and development, questions that you would have asked your current employer had you known their approach to certain things.
Yeah.
I think that's as workplace savage as I can get with that answer, Fanny.
Yeah, that was very well done. I'm not sure I can even add to it. I mean, I was going to say that, I feel like you're usually planning the solid professional route, and I'm so used to the anarchy. Plan C, when A and B fail, like then I'm ready to uproar.
Okay, so let's go into like the dream utopia where anarchy is accepted. Like,
Anarchy
what do
is
you do?
Oh, then yeah, I organize like a motherfucker.
Like, are we talking walkouts? Like,
I'm talking walkouts, strikes. I mean, of course, we're not working off of too much detail here. The other question I was going to ask is, what sort of reporting process do they have? Do you, as an employee, know what, not just, do you as an employee know what's going to happen to you once you speak up about an issue? What's the process afterwards? Because, like we've covered in so many ways, there's a ton of retaliation, institutional betrayal occurs after you report incidences, because, and especially in cases where the issue is senior management, it's workplace hot potato. And I don't know, also, that's great that you love your colleagues. Do you trust your colleagues? Can you have conversations with them about this without it trickling to the wrong ears? Without, because in my experience, organizing is really, really hard.
That's all great points. And you said you had nothing to add, and this bitch just drops incredibly relevant information in here. The policy stuff, I feel like, is because you did a lot of policy work towards the end of last year for Hand and Heart, and it's such a great point to raise. I was thinking very holistically, but that is absolutely something you need to be aware of when you're going through all of this. Trusting your colleagues, great question, great point of introspection. And then the second thing is that I forgot that we should add in here that if you start this organizing process, document everything. Yeah. Everything should be documented.
Always keep receipts, man.
Yep. BCC yourself to a personal email. Download PDFs of everything. Have it filed away, not on work devices. It is your data. You should be doing that. Leave nothing to chance.
Never.
But, hopefully you find a nice one.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to be resolved for you. I wish you all the best.
That's so helpful right now.
Yeah, but we're going to explore every single angle to this is what I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so with that, we are going to have a few other different segments moving through the Workplace Weekly format. So in the future, we're going to have interviews with experts, people from the industry, activists, people that are experienced in the space that we want to hear from and we think people will want to hear from. And we're also going to try another segment that involves a little bit of audience engagement. Always tricky.
Yeah. We've got a couple of those, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've got a very engaged community, I think, and you've slowly nurtured that into the Hand and Heart Instagram, which you should follow. But basically what we want to do is hear your stories from the workplace. So the theme was fuck you, I quit.
Fuck you, I quit. We want to hear from you the incidences at your workplace that made you say it's just not worth it anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the little things that you've done to maybe get a little bit of a one up, a little bit of redemption.
Yeah.
So Fanny, you got anything that you think is a good example here from your own little industrial waste bin of bullshit?
Yeah, I mean, hey, only taken from my own personal experiences. Besides this one, the only jobs I've ever had have been in bars.
Yes.
And I have twice experienced handing in notice. And then during my notice period, my bosses tried to fire me.
That's so weird. Like,
yeah.
What is that upper hand?
No, they get very mad. It's very weird. And then suddenly it becomes a very hostile 2 weeks. And you're sort of like, I'm sorry, I'm going to university. Like, it's not a personal dig at you. But yeah, certainly that's happened to me. And I think the first time that happened, I'd found another job, put in my notice. It was a horrible manager who definitely thought that the female bartenders were within his dating pool. And then maybe a couple weeks after I left, then I got a text message from said manager asking me to come in and work a shift, and I let him have it. I was 21. Yeah, I was 21. It's totally okay. I'm not ashamed.
Okay.
And I need to find that phone because that can totally be Workplace Weekly material if I find the screenshots. Yeah. What not to do if you're above 21.
Yeah. And as far as I understand this story as well, I mean, you let him have it, but you also heard on the grapevine that he was shocked.
Oh my God, he was so surprised. I couldn't believe it. This was a married man who would then bring in his girlfriends to the bar. Fine, not my problem, prerogative, whatever. Pretty shitty of you. But then on top of that, then hitting on all the younger female bartenders. Had a kiss planted on me once. Had to multiple times was told to go dance with his buddies who all got to drink quite cheaply at the bar. And yeah, apparently he did not understand where all my anger was coming from.
This is what astounds me, dude. Is like I said it to you when we were discussing it earlier, but when the only thing I believe men who are accused of wrongdoing about is that they're shocked when they hear about the wrongdoings, because I think it's entirely indicative of their complete lack of self-awareness. So that's the only fucking thing I believe these guys on. Because I'm like, I believe you are shocked to hear this, and that someone was displeased with the way you treated them, or traumatized, or whatever, filing a police report.
I mean, crazy. Clearly, I was the problem, because who would have thought that? Fuck, I lost my train of thought.
Clearly you were the problem.
Clearly I was the problem. I mean, a 40-year-old manager kissing his 20-year-old bartender. Like, what's wrong with that? I don't see a problem. Do you?
No, not at all. I would be shocked if someone told me that was a problem.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of people who were shocked to be told they were the problem, I've got a good one, and this is much more on the spectrum of me getting a little bit back. A little bit of that redemption arc, because I want to hear all these pissy little things people do in the workplace just to get a little one up. These little email battles and stuff. So I had I was on contract with a tech company in Berlin, and kind of everything went wildly to shit. Like, I can't legally go into too much detail. Long story short, a senior person gets accused of sexual harassment. This goes public, and essentially I'm roped into it because the person who was accused, who was my direct report, the person I was, contracted to report to, that they had been set up by another senior person who wanted their job. All right. So basically, this senior guy accused of the misconduct, and I wasn't in an investigatory position, I just have to make clear.
Okay.
Basically, starts calling me and wants to call me as a witness because this person that he believed had set them up had bullied me, actually, and had said some pretty heinous things about me. So, long story short, I end up spending hours with this guy and his back and forth with legal shit and how I'm going to support the situation, because that was kind of the way I perceived it. And he definitely had put it into my head that this person very much was out to get me as well, which I could believe because this person had been bullying me. Anyway, turns out motherfucker was lying about everything.
Of course.
So all of those hours on the phone, all of the gaslighting, everything he was lying about, except the truthful things that he told me what this other person did. So once it all settled, I decided to send this prick an emotional labor invoice. Because the amount of time this man took from my life. So I went back through and I itemized all of the time we spent on the phone together. I literally put in the, what is it called? When you itemize
You just,
it?
you notarize, itemize everything.
Yeah, I itemized 2.5 hours listening to your gaslighting of XYZ, blah, 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 blah.
Wow. How do you take it?
Not good.
No? Oh my, that's shocking.
Refuse to pay. The invoice is still open. So, motherfucker, if you are watching, I might send you a follow-up and ask if you're going to get that shit paid.
How many years interest is on that invoice?
It was 2018, so we're getting on to some 5 years of interest. I'm coming for you, motherfucker. If I see you on any fitness tech podcast again, look out.
Got you.
But I just have to say, it was about, this man traumatized me genuinely. And people relate to that who are listening to this, I think. And it was a little way of taking back the power and also being I don't care what you think. That power dynamic between us is gone. And I don't respect you, and what you did was wrong. And I know you're not going to do anything about it, but I know that I've said it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's sometimes what it's about. That's what those little victories are about.
Sometimes that needs to be enough. You're not always going to get what you want out of people. So, like I said, you always have to find closure on your own.
Exactly. You define your closure, because ultimately closure is a boundary when you think about it.
Yeah.
So you have to really be the one to define that. And I think in workplaces, we are often left to feel so powerless that we don't think we're in control of that.
Yeah.
Every time you think you're not in control of it, just remember I sent an emotional labor invoice to a grown-ass man.
And you can too.
And you can too.
So
and
good.
on that, we're closing this bad boy out.
Yeah, thank you so much, KB.
Thank you so much, Fanny, and we will see everyone for the next installment of Workplace Weekly.
Workplace Weekly was produced by Kate Bailey and Fanny Wandel for Hand and Heart Media, the publishing arm of Hand and Heart GmbH. You can follow Hand and Heart on Instagram via @handandheart.eu, via @h_and_h media. For any inquiries related to this broadcast, please email admin@handandheart.eu. Our music was composed and performed by Amanda and produced by Amanda with Kyle Startup. You can follow Amanda on Instagram or listen to their music on Spotify, Apple, or SoundCloud. If you love Amanda's music, please consider buying it from Bandcamp. Support indie, always. Our artwork was created by Nix Renton, a fantastic photographer and graphic designer, and you can find them in the links in the episode description. You can always find Workplace Weekly on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Vimeo, and basically wherever you get your podcasts. For those wanting an RSS feed, the link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening.